Hello, welcome to this video. This is part 4 of my Sequential Growth Series. My name is Allie with A. Marie Speaks, and this phase and first part of the series is dedicated to talking about how energy flows in certain shapes and patterns, and energy grows through certain shapes and patterns. So I'm hoping to sort of sketch out and speak about these different points of view and how the numbers, the numeric values of sequential growth, which I'll speak about after in the second segment, how they move and how they exchange energy. And so this is the point of view. Number 3 is kind of what I'm calling this stage. If you haven't seen 1 and 2 and the foundational original part number 1, which is kind of like a generic video, I would really suggest watching those before you watch this, because the information is interdependent, and it's important to see how 1, the linear view, builds into 2, which is the staircase sort of view, I'm calling it. I'll show my notes here very quickly, just for anybody who's sort of interested and is brand new. This is the points of view that I'm going to go through, and I've already talked about the first phase, which is linear, and the second phase is sequential or staircase. I haven't, I'm just kind of using, sorry, my light is terrible here. The third is the spiral or the helix, which we're going to talk about today and right now. The fourth, of course, we have, I have dots, and then I have a vision of a symbol, Both are specific and also general. Just helpful to either type of mind, which way you're kind of left or right brained. You might see these things better, in my opinion. But anyway, so we have 4, and we have 4 as the circular view. Or cycles, as I was kind of calling it, cycles or circles. 5th view is the lemniscat. 6th view will be the toroidal. The 7th view is the geometric view, and then we have 8 and 9 as our final non-physical concepts, qualities that are just as important as the physical structuring, the manifestation of physical energies that 1 through 7 are all about. 8 and 9 are non-physical, but no less important in the fact that 8 represents how all the dots connect and what it's containing, the material inside of it, as well as what material is outside of it and how it does its service, external and internal, and where the boundaries are to that. And of course 9 is the ultimate set boundary. It interlinks with the number 1, and it kind of seals the deal of the isness of what the thing is. And so if you're like interested and you missed the first videos, please go back and watch them, because I talk through a lot of that stuff a bit more in each one of those previous videos I've done already. And like I said, today what I'd really like to just speak about quickly is this third point of view, which is the spiraling. And this is built, of course, out of the second view, which is the staircase view. Now, like I mentioned in the previous videos, 1 and 2 are kind of, 1 is one-dimensional and 2 is two-dimensional. They're kind of flat. They're kind of straightforward, and there's these straight lines almost. But what I'm going to bring in here is how straight lines curve, how we find curvature in the line. Things like the golden ratio and the phi, the sacred spiraling, is what I'm going to attempt to explain right now, and what comes into play with the third stage. And so I mentioned just at the end of the last video a little bit about how the stages and steps between each number have a magical kind of leap between them. Because we have a choice point, because there's free will and duality at play, and there's positive, negative, there's yes, no, that comes into play in the second phase, and creates choice points and clear distinctions between 1 and 2 phases and 3 and 4 that weren't quite clear or seen as fully from the first view. Now, what is really happening, and I'll show this here. Now see the number line, whoops. Every single number, like I talked about with the linear view here, has the potential to zoom into it. It has smaller bits inside of it. It has centimeters, meters, millimeters, right? If we take a decimal and add it between 1 and 2 and 3, we could have 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3. We've created more space, right? That expansive creation of space is energy doing this. Energy holds space by moving through it. We have to remember that it's not static. It's not stand still. It's always moving. It's always changing. And so how do we do that? How does it always do that, though? This is how it always does it, because inside every single number is potentials of always being held, sort of ran through. And so between every single number, we see the lemniscat as an option happening. So in the first and second view, they're so close to the start and they're so segmented that we don't really, the space that it's created is super focused on the single purpose that it already is. Because 1, of course, is its soul self and it's focused on itself. And 2 becomes everything that it is not. When we have 3 come in, there's this display of the lemniscat that happens, that the motion between 1 and 2, the area to be circumvented, to be moved through, to be experienced, it becomes, what's the best word for it? Enlivened. It becomes a conscious representation of something unexpected that 1 and 2 didn't see from either of their point of views. And this is kind of hard to describe and to delineate and to get out into words, but it's also why I have the triad of creation tagged into the third stage, and to why I like to bring in not just Father, Son, Holy Ghost, or not just mystery and magic of what that spirit quality kind of invigorates within us, but also the mother, father, and the child create in this point of conception, right? And how when you have a child, it's a mixture of combos from the father and the mother, from number 1 and number 2, yet it's unknown to them how it will come out. And what comes of combinations of fruition is something completely separate from the two of them, and yet it is of them. And it has its own point of view. It has a new perspective. And the perspective has been made and built up of happenings of 1 and 2. And it becomes more tangible to us when we think about it as, plain as day as a child. Again, this is the third stage is generally, when you talk about numerology, people will talk about children, childlike energy, creativity and things with number 3, which is all still there in phase number 3, of course. However, we're talking sort of just about energetic movement, and so when we talk about the spiral helix with the shape of what gets created, it's an unexpected twist. This is what I'm saying about seeing something from a new view. Instead of seeing the staircase as just stairs and steps and up from A to B, there's an unexpected turn in a spiraling staircase. It's still getting us up to where we think we're going. We still have this sort of hierarchical type of viewing of what's building up, because it's so close to the initial point. It hasn't had time to start to make the beautiful curve, really, for you to see the full shape that will come to fruition. But the turning is there. There's unexpectedness. There's this sort of external reality becomes even more evident. I talked about this in the other video about how we can kind of trick ourselves into stagnated control group growth that never actually makes its way out of a one whole, and instead it just puts the decimal in there and starts counting 1.1 and never actually allows 2 to come out into the real world, into the external, and grow organically. When we allow 3 to actually grow organically, we start to understand more about the ever-changing lemniscat that I was speaking about, because it looks like a looping when you're very close to it, a singular looping, sort of through stages 1 and 2. But when 3 adds the twist, quite literally, it shifts the energy. It does this unexpected thing with it, and there's no going back once you've seen the unexpected thing happen. You have to now incorporate room for the unexpected. And it's also just like when you get pregnant, just like when you have a baby, just like when you birth a baby. It's like God takes the wheel when all that happens. There's not a conscious cell in my body that built either one of my children. And no matter how much I thought I could be composed or knew what was going to happen or knew how to give birth or anything, watched a video on it, nothing. God got me through that. Innate, infinite intelligence built into and through my fractal DNA knew what to do through that. That's something way bigger than myself. That's something way bigger than the self. And it's something much larger than the numbers, even. And this is the thing about magical math, and why I'm kind of calling it organic math, and trying to bring life into it and understand that it's not just flat numbers on a page. It's not just 2 plus 2 is always going to give us 4. Yes, quantitatively counting, and even qualitatively, these things work in a rhythmic fashion. But it's not stagnant. It's not just a still frame image. We're talking about movement here. It's movement always happening. And so the flow of energy that becomes or has the potentiality to really become alive, something new, always something new, when you actually step into that third phase with faith and with trust in the whole, and that actually allowing the things that pop up through the third stage to have a chance, it's just like, again, back to the children parenting kind of example. you know, you might think about how you want your kid to grow up or what you think you want about them, but if you're not actually paying attention to them and what they're good at and what they're called to do, you could miss completely what they feel their real purpose is, and you could jam them into something that perhaps wasn't even their purpose, but you thought it was because it's part of your purpose, you know? These kinds of internal things happen with growth, with energetic movement, and we've been really mind controlled to keep into strict certain types of system exchanges. But when we look at things organically and we look at how positive natural growth really happens, in stage 3 we really should be leaning into sort of the overall mystery of it, into creator, into the fun and adventure of it all, and letting the new things pop up and see what they are and going with them, and if they don't, try something else if that doesn't work. And really, you know, this is the third thing, this is the other thing about adding dimensionality, which comes into great examples here. It's that we don't just have horizontal and vertical anymore of to move around with. You know what I mean? There becomes the z-axis. It becomes, oh yeah, it's not just a flat picture of a figure 8. It's actually the toroidal, you know. It's a donut shape. It's trying to show us a 3. It's not just a square, it's a cube. You know, oh, it's not just a circle, it's a sphere. But if we don't have the knowledge of the added dimensionality to the picture, how do you work to grasp that, right? So the third stage brings us into a new area to move within, and we have to really fully embrace that. And yeah, so the where's my handy dandies that I started off with here? So when we start to see that this is like packed into every single number, there's energetic potentials at work. It shifts the view from, you know, a stagnant 1 and 2 dimensional views to now we're seeing things in 3D with the third view. I guess the last thing that I will sort of add here, the spiraling around. Now, this is just the tip, just for sort of a taste at the start to understand. We'll get deeper into this later, but the center point is the point, the center of what your whole truth is, and what the truth is that sort of magnetic core that everything is turning around and around and around. And that, like I said, the way to grow organically and the way to relinquish sort of control is you are allowing yourself to know that you're circling around God, source, before and after, the ultimate goal. And that each path through and around gets you closer to it. This sort of sounds repetitive if you don't hear the depth in it, you know, but hoping for those who can hear the depth in what I'm saying. The center point is easily missed or overlooked when we're in the first 2 points of view. And why is that? Well, because we're so close in, we see line segment, line segment, line segment. And it doesn't, you just don't have enough time yet, or a high enough view away from what you're looking at to see the full truth of it. And this is really how we can trick ourselves, and how we can get stuck in illusions and delusions and negative systems, and how we trick ourselves into staying in negative systems, and convincing ourselves that negative systems are all there are. It comes from a denial of God. It comes from a denial of connectivity to worth and sovereign worth. And so what we're really circling around is God, is the truth, is your sovereign worth. In that recognition that you seek to find that for yourself, and that alone, that leads you. That makes sure your corrective course is circling around the actual truth. Because we can get tricked and lost. And so I'm getting a little bit into the shadow spiritual side of it. But it's important to know that how close we are to something really designates how we see a thing. And it's so helpful when we talk about, when we see it in math, because it's externalized and it's so separate from us. But that's supposed to help us to translate that skill into the more harder to define closeness of heart, closeness of mind. So that when we are far away from something, we can sense it and not be fooling ourselves that into doing things that we wouldn't typically do if we were close to something. Again, this is, I think, why family units are so important, and also why it's important to remember about love and connectivity, and that organic math is fueled by love, and that all of this really is working to describe the functions of light and love, and the aliveness of it, and that truth, recognition of what we're looking for, we shouldn't be afraid to find it. We will find it, you know. I think sometimes this is why I love metaphysics, because it works, or it seeks to bring together a lot of these separate, different perspectives. And much like I'm doing here with trying to separate out the perspectives and bring them back together again, and show how they're all actually a part of each other and they're all parts of a whole, I think we will realize math, physics, chemistry, all the studies, all the ologies are actually interrelated and are actually all studying the same thing, the aliveness of life, consciousness. And so when we look at things like numbers, when we look at what we're trying to explain about how a helix is formed, it makes perfect sense to me to say it's mysterious God source fueled by love. You know, and that's the key, and that's the answer. But some people might think, like, that's absolutely batshit crazy. That has more questions there than any answer that you offered. You know, but to me, I can now see all points of view, because I came from very strict kind of, you need to prove it to me, science, literal explanations, now into understanding and the depth of it. So just for those who perhaps are a little offset by anything, know that to me, those answers seem more reliable, predictable, and stand the test of time, peer-reviewed studies for a longer time than any math, any physicist, any mathematician, anybody's theories, or anything that's been proved out there. So yeah, I do think that there has to be a recognition of God, source, creator in the third stage. And I think, in all stages it's very helpful, but it's not necessary in the first two stages to get things going, unfortunately. I think, again, this is how we get trapped into negative systems and liar loops and into a lot of confusion and delusions. But once you really start to interact and exchange with and want to build relationship or a place of communion out in the external third-party space, you'll realize it feels good to feel good. It's nice to have good relationships. You want the best for those around you when you care for them. When you honor someone as a great reflection of God, source, creator, and ultimately as brother or sister in humanity, just as much right to be alive as you have. This is the sovereign space of 3. And this is where you really can get the great feedback, and you really will start to build out firm foundations that accumulate into stage 4, into a real stage 4, into happy family, into real stability, into strong foundations that can be built upon and last lifetimes. Not something that comes up to 5 and cracks and crumbles, not, Jimmy rigged together, rushed and put together house with all of the Mickey Mouse nonsense, that the second that a storm hits, you're going to have huge flooding and problems and cracks and windows broken and a hole in your roof. But here in 3 is how we even can learn to build transparently, to have firm foundations for 4, is by trusting each other in this sovereign state. And again, that's why I love the depiction and the metaphor of the kind of the family here for the third stage. And I use the triad of creation as well, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, in a dynamic to have. I mean, you can use higher self, yourself, and inner child if that resonates more with you. Whatever combo that you choose to want to see that placement as, but it's the balancing of sovereign respect out of different points of view that's what truly teaches us. The real essence of 3 that accumulate to a true 4. The 2 things that I will end with here on 3 notes that I have to bring forth. First of all is the triangle, and it's the strongest shape, and it's also such a tool. It's sharply pointed, and it's points to look at it in its 2D horizontal version, to see it either with the point upright and a bottom base like this, very firmly a firm foundation on the bottom, versus to have it this way, which is kind of like moo tippy, with a lot on top. These are the kind of major ways that we start to look at a triangular hierarchy. However, this in itself is the first step that we take towards a negative delineation from true organic shapes, because we've already jammed ourselves into one perspective, this flat view that says that the triangle is this way, and that means it can be upright or it can be upside down. Well, yeah. However, let's not forget, please, about, the horizontal plane. And actually, a triangle could be a shape like a tape on the floor on which we each stand equal-footed in this shape. This reconfiguration of how we look at a symbol, at a shape, at geometry, and how we open up our field from the first POV into the second POV, remembering and allowing ourselves, there's actually more room to move around here. Actually, there's more ways to look at it than just that and that. You know, that looks a little, that's very forceful in its point of view. If we turn the triangle in a horizontal fashion, and we know that actually these points of view offer a perspective, different perspective on the center point. You stand over here, I stand over there, he stands over there. We each are looking at the same point, but from a different walk up. We can turn our backs to each other, conversely, and see outwards from totally different angles. Whatever view of something in all other angles, all other directionality. We have different pieces in the coordinate plane. Yet we're all equal in value. We're all just a point on this, in this version of looking at it, right? This is again why I love to bring in and say too, as the woman in the secondary unit that offers fresh eyes to the singular sight, that splits the sight and says, oh yeah, remember there's movement. Just like the woman is the neck and the man is the head. You know, she changes where he looks at, but he looks, the focus. One is actionary, one is focus. Two allows us to have movement, allows us to see the things in different ways, lets us remember, oh yeah, we're looking at one thing in different ways, right? And so when we have an equal footing and when we have a good relationship pair and we can actually remember the horizontal plane and view the triangle in that shape, mother, father, and child on equal footing, that, mind blown, game changer, you know? And when we can do jobs in this kind of way, we could build projects in this kind of way, we could see all types of friendships and relationships, and even acquaintances and strangers and all this kind of stuff, seeing everybody on equal footing instead of this upright hierarchy with this directionality that is so forced, because it's an illusion, it's not real. We have chosen that single first point of view, and we're trying to jam everything into it. So that's my thing about the triangle and the 3 points in the third stage, and being able to work in the other points of view we've already accumulated and been through. How do we apply them to this third stage now? How do we apply them to the shape 3 takes? And of course, 3's most stable shape to form is the triangle. And you know, and then we bring in the notion of duality and polarity from stage 2 and say, oh yeah, we don't just have to have it in this way. We can put it horizontally. We can all be on equal footing. There's ways to change it up. And that having that plane of operation for the 3 to move around in with the buffer zone of unconditional love really gives that third phase free reign to explore and to not worry about judgment, to not worry about exile or any of these kind of things that could come in a negative hierarchy. It won't be trying to say, am I on top or am I on bottom? Who am I? Am I this? Is it that way or this way? And always feeling like it's 2 against 1, or feeling like an oddball out, or the third wheel. You know, it's no actual, any real true organic production and productivity can build stability out of that. It doesn't. It's you know. The final thing about the 3 that I'd like to bring in is the magic of 3 and magical math to kind of close out the third stage and phase with one of my favorite little inside jokes from the creator that I like to share and give, which is 1 + 1 is 3. And this is also such a third phase message that comes in, that 1 and 2 get to learn only through 3. And so it's really a message that 3 brings in, which is again why I say 3 is the stage where we remember about the mystery and the fun and adventure. We are reborn with our children. We see the light, our eyes through childlike eyes again when we have a child to experience these things in. You know, they rekindle those sort of imagination and all of those excitement feelings and stuff, the newness that 3 brings in, that a child brings in. 1 + 1 is 3 is a joke, and it's the creator's joke. It's an inside joke, and artificial AI, inorganic repetition will never get it. It can't laugh, first of all, and it doesn't do anything that's not self-serving. So it cannot understand how one single concept could ever be a part of something that it isn't exactly like. And what does that mean? Artificial would try to figure out 1 + 1 is 3, and to say, we're counting, 1, 1, and 1 is and now we have 3, and it would see, the quantitative accumulation only. And that's not correct, because it actually asks it to sort of break its own rules, right? About what it knows about a quantitative gathering, accumulation of items. But that's not what we're talking about here. It's not what we're doing. We're saying one human plus 1 human comes together, and we have, yes, 3 humans now with the birth of the child, but 3 is the family unit. 3 becomes qualitative representation of what family it means. This whole new unit, a whole new type of whole expression, and it's skipped right over number 2. And in fact, husband and wife sort of exit out. They sort of peace out on their own relationship of the 2 that they are when the 3 comes into fruition, when they have a family unit, because all main focus comes on the child. The whole life becomes, and all of their schedule and their to-dos and everything become focused on what the needs met for the child. And so 1 + 1 is 3. I love to call magical math and say it's an inside joke with the creator, because it's consciousness. We are fractal units of creator consciousness. We totally can get that. 1 human gives us 3 humans together. It's a family unit. It's a whole new 3. But it's not to negate or say anything separate about actually adding 1 + 1 and giving us the number 2. It's very, it's quantitative math. I'm not trying to disprove that in any fashion at all. I'm just trying to show how, if we allow magic and imagination to come into things, we can see those plain old things totally in a different way. And in fact, they mean more, and they're more purposeful to us, personally, when we do that, when we allow for that new fun way to look at something, So yeah, that sort of different flavorings about what the stage of 3, the phase of 3 looks like, and also just a little bit about the energetics of the 3rd stage and the vortex that gets created with the spiraling. It's the confirmation, okay, God, I'm going with this. Okay, organic life. Okay, creator, universe, I'm going with this. I trust you. I feel it. It's there. And you start to go with it. And that's what Jing creates, that spiraling effect. Same thing, same sort of rule of application. Bring it back to love and leaning into faith. When I explain and talk about the golden ratio and how the imperfect perfect sharing is equal half with sharing, actually through organic, is not 1.5. Mother Nature doesn't cut anything completely straight. It's 1.618 for a reason. It's slightly off kilter because it creates the curvature there. If everything was black and white, cut and dry, if it was just mathematics, and if automaton 1 + 1 + 1 gets 3, and everything was sort of like that, everything would be equal half. There'd be no spiraling. There'd be no beauty. The fact that there is tells us right there that we should lean into it, that we should go with it, that we should trust it. So yeah, anyways, that's been my talk about the 3rd stage. Thanks for listening to this energetic flow video. I hope you'll tune in next time. We'll talk about the fourth point of view and stability being created over time. So yeah, thanks for checking my video out, and I'll see you next time.